So do I really need this? Oh, okay. People on YouTube can't hear me shouting. They're not that near. Right, okay. YouTube, whatever it's on. I mean, the broadcast thing. Haven't we got a YouTube channel? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Right, start again. Good morning, everybody. Right, hello. Lovely to see you all here this morning. I'm sure people know who I am. Jonathan Gill, Director for Communities. I'm sure you do, which covers community safety. And so today, this is part of the various things that we are doing for 16 days of activism, aiming at tackling doing what we can to tackle and reduce violence against women and girls. If you weren't, I'm trying to think, some people were at the walk at Hartham Common on Friday. If you weren't, where were you? It was a really good kind of a brisk march around the Common then. Nice breakup of the day. I did more work then than I would have done sat at my desk. I was catching up with everyone. Anyway, today we have Joe and Jodie from Future Living here in Hertford. A really good, a really accomplished organization that works to inform, support, tackle domestic abuse in all its guises, and it affects both survivors of that, families of people experiencing it, perpetrators as well. So I'm very, very pleased to have two colleagues with us to go through and give us a presentation today. Okay. I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. It's better for me to be honest with you and just let you know that I've not delivered this training before. I've done lots of training in domestic abuse, so don't be worried about that. But I was drafted in at the last minute to cover a colleague who is unwell today. So if I look really surprised by any of the slides or you see me going backwards and forwards, that is why. So I think we'll start. Is that okay? So who we are. So you might not have heard of Future Living before. I hadn't heard of them before I went to work there. But basically, Future Living is, our vision is a future where domestic abuse is a thing of the past. Until then, we support survivors to heal, lead, change in their community and ensure that safe and healthy relationships are embedded into every generation. So who is delivering today? That's me. So I'll tell you a bit about me. I'm Jo. So I work for Future Living and I do various things at Future Living. So one of the things I do is I run training every week for Hertfordshire Police and it's about really how to handle victims of domestic abuse. We also run what's called the Monica Programme, which is a programme aimed at female survivors of domestic abuse. We also have one that runs for male survivors, but I don't run that. That's run by my colleague. We also have a wonderful project we do called Young Hearts, where I get to go out to year 6 classes and really do this, but in a child-friendly way. And it is really, really fun, even though we're talking about serious stuff. So that's a really good thing that we do. We just help them to spot red flag behaviour in sort of friendships and things, so that they can kind of have that in their minds as they get older. So Future Living, it provides counselling and kind of group work and lots of other things like that as well. Outside of Future Living, I'm also a magistrate for family court. Don't hold that against me. We know the court system doesn't work always as well as it should do. But also I get to hear about issues of domestic abuse in that role as well. So I'm just going to let Jodie introduce herself.
Hi, so I'm Jodie. I am a family caseworker at Future Living. How I found Future Living, I was actually a victim of domestic abuse. I'd done all of my counselling and things there, and 4 years on, I am now a family caseworker, and I'll be sharing a bit of my story with you today.
So yes, you will be hearing more from Jodie today. So this is what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to understand the characteristics of healthy and unhealthy relationships, enhancing knowledge of domestic abuse lived experience. We're going to talk about trauma awareness, police response to domestic abuse call-outs, understanding local support available, reflections and evaluations, and then that should be the end. I believe we're finishing around 12 o'clock. Just to let you know, obviously, some of the things that we're going to talk about today are difficult to hear. You will be hearing about Jodie's experience. So it's just to give you a warning that if you do find any of it triggering, then obviously if you need to go out or what have you for a bit, that's absolutely fine. Hopefully you'll be able to stay, but we know that it's not always the big things that trigger us. Sometimes it can be something really small. So it's just to give you a little bit of a warning about that. Okay, so understanding healthy relationships. So this isn't just gonna be me talking. I can talk a lot, but it's not just gonna be me. I'm gonna ask you some things, and the first thing I'm gonna ask you is describe a quality of a healthy relationship in one word. It doesn't have to be one word if that's too tricky. What do you think a healthy relationship is? So respect, yeah? Anything else? Happiness, to feel happy and content in that relationship. Yeah, anything else? Trusted, yeah. Anything else? Supportive, compassionate. So lots of good things, but trust is very important, isn't it? And respect, two of the most really important things, that there's some sort of equality in those relationships as well. So let's have a look at this. So a healthy relationship means that both of you and your partner are communicating. So you can speak openly to each other without having to worry about what the other person's reaction is going to be. You're being respectful. You value each other as you are. You respect each other's emotions, digital and sexual boundaries. Trusting. You believe what your partner has to say. You do not feel that you need to prove each other's trustworthiness. Honest. So you're honest with each other, but can still keep some things private if you choose to do that. Equal. You make decisions together and hold each other to the same standards. Enjoying personal time. You both can enjoy spending time apart, alone, or with others. You respect each other's need for time apart. So being in a healthy relationship is about, yes, spending good quality time together, but you should be able to still keep your people and still do the things that you want to do without somebody kind of getting in the way of that. So if you're in an unhealthy relationship, it's probably that there's not a lot of communication. Okay, so when problems arise, you might fight or don't discuss them at all. You might be disrespectful. So one or both partners is not respectful and doesn't respect the other person's feelings or boundaries. Not trusting. So one partner doesn't believe what the other says or feels entitled to invade their privacy. Dishonest. So one or both partners tells lies. Trying to take control. So one partner feels their desires and choices are more important. Only spending time with your partner. Your partner's community is the only one you socialize in. So let's be clear here. So these are unhealthy behaviors. This doesn't mean that if these things happen in our relationships, it's the end. Lots of functional relationships have some unhealthy behaviors in them. So, for example, with my husband, he's really not that good with money. So I will try and advise him about certain decisions he's going to make. Obviously, I can't control that. He's his own person. But, lots of us do things that we think actually we shouldn't really do that. And we can still have kind of functional relationships, but there might be some unhealthy behaviors within that. But abusive is different. So abuse is occurring in a relationship when one partner communicates in a way that is hurtful, threatening, insulting, or demeaning. So, for example, if I started trying to control everything my husband did because I thought he made different decisions that I would like him to, or saying that he had to put all the money in my bank account, that wouldn't be okay. So, there's a real big difference between being abusive and having kind of unhealthy traits here and there. Disrespects the feelings, thoughts, decisions, opinions, or physical safety of others, physically hurts or injures the other partner, blames the other partner for harmful actions, makes excuses for abusive actions and or minimizes the abusive behavior, controls and isolates the other partner by telling them what to wear, who they can hang out with, where they can go and what they can do, pressures or forces the other partner into doing things they don't want to do, threatens, hurts, or blackmails their partner if they try to say no. So as you can see, there's a very clear, I say it's a clear difference, but sometimes actually the line can become blurred between something that's just unhealthy and something that's abusive. And I think a lot of our survivors that we work with still struggle with that, kind of recognizing, you know, was that actually abusive or was that just something that was unhealthy? But there is a difference. So obviously you're all here from different roles. I'm quite interested to find out if you have any experience of working with clients or people generally, where you might become involved with their situations where there's domestic abuse. And if anyone wants to share anything about that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll just repeat, I'm a police officer. I've been in many situations with domestic violence, domestic abuse. I won't pick one out, but very common in the right-hand column
Yeah.
of things that I've seen. So yeah, it covers it.
Yeah. And would you say that definitely victims of abuse sometimes struggle to recognise there's abuse?
Yeah, definitely. Abusers can be quite manipulative. They convince the victim that the abuse isn't happening, and they stay with them a lot of the time and blame themselves for that decision.
Yeah.
I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the time it's from fear.
Yeah.
Fear of it happening again, fear of being alone.
Yeah.
There's so many different scenarios, but yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have experience with the public or clients or anyone where they've become involved in, yeah.
So I work in the community safety team. So our experience can be either working with someone who may be experiencing domestic abuse or having neighbours report that they are witnessing it and they come through reporting that as antisocial behaviour. So then we're trying to manage how best to support the neighbours who are listening to something that
Yeah.
is quite distressing for
Yeah.
them, and then tactfully approaching the resident who is experiencing it. So that can be quite a
Absolutely.
challenge at times.
So you make a really good point there, because obviously it's terrible for victims that are caught in this cycle of abuse, but also it's very distressing for neighbours, family members, friends, people that are really concerned about victims, and they are kind of powerless to do anything, but they know it's going on. It's really tricky. So another question for you. Is there anything in particular that you think you would like to gain out of this training today? You might have just come along to see what it's like, but is there anything specific for people that might help? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just better knowing how to support somebody to actually seek help if they are in that situation would be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think later on we're going to talk about some of the barriers to people actually asking or getting help. So hopefully that will be useful. Anything else that people think might be useful for them in their job role?
Sorry, I work in electoral. We have a lot of women that once they've come out of being in an abusive relationship want to get registered to be able to rebuild their lives and to be able to vote. But then when we have to send them some paperwork, they get quite scared. So just maybe how we can support them to realise that they can actually carry on and do their life as normal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about this a bit later, but I think there's a misconception that actually once you leave the relationship, it's all, you know, we're free and everything's good. But actually that can be one of the most difficult times for victims, because you're on your own and you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, who's going to support you, or actually even what's out there. Because, you know, why would you know that? Okay, so hopefully we'll cover some of those things and other things today. So what is domestic abuse? So any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over who have been intimate partners or family members regardless of gender or sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited to, the following types of abuse. So psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional. This definition, which is not a legal definition, includes so-called honour-based violence, FGM and forced marriage, and is clear that victims are not confined to one gender or ethnic group. So as we know, abuse does happen to men as well as women. I don't think so many men come forward, but it definitely happens. So what this may look like, so it's helpful for you to know this. So there's obviously a lot of physical abuse, which we all know. So usually if there's physical abuse, a person will know that that's not okay. Although sometimes people don't realise that things like pushing is still assault, and that's not okay either. But physical things, people are normally happier to report because they know actually somebody's crossed the line here. But pulling, pushing and shoving can be something that sometimes gets missed. So things like strangulation, drowning, blocking airways, throwing objects at the victims. Again, people think, oh, this person's just lost their temper. They're not necessarily recognising that that's actually really violent behaviour, to throw things around or near somebody. Grabbing to prevent them from leaving. So this could be grabbing an actual person by their arms, or it could be by their clothes even. Forcing them to go somewhere. So that's sort of physical abuse. Sexual abuse. So there's lots of different forms of sexual abuse. So some things are really obvious that we know of, but there are a lot of other more subtle things that people will do as well. So obviously unwanted kind of physical touching, or being made to do things in a sexual act that they don't really want to do or that they're not sure about. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things listed there, which I won't read out to you exactly, but some are obvious and some are more where a victim may feel pressurized into having sex when they don't really want to. It might be that they will face certain sorts of behavior if they don't do what they're expected to do. Sometimes things like culture and religion can be used, and it's just the duty of that other person to perform, even if they don't want to do that. But there's lots of other more subtle ways, things like sharing intimate images or threatening them with that. And just really generally anything that's done to make a person feel pressured into doing something they don't want to do. So violent and threatening behaviour, that can be damaging property, so throwing objects, things like punching walls or doors, destroying personal and treasured items, threatening to end their life, threatening to harm the victim, the children, the pets, threatening to have children taken away. That's a very powerful tool, which we'll talk about later a bit more. Threatening to use weapons, threatening to expose sensitive information, threatening to make false allegations, threatening to report to police, social services or immigration. So if that person has something on you, maybe they might threaten to use that. So that's quite a few things here. It's not everything, but these are just some of the things that might be kind of signs of domestic abuse. Okay, so what it may look like. So economical abuse. So being in total control of family finances. So this is something we hear about a lot in our groups we work with survivors usually rather than people that are still in the relationships. But it's not uncommon for an abuser to kind of take control of all of the finances so that that victim doesn't know anything about family income, how much money there is, even silly things like how to take out car insurance, things like that. They will kind of disempower the victim by making sure that they're the one that's in complete control. Not allowing the victim to spend money unless it's permitted, making the victim account for all spending, refusing to contribute to household income. So sometimes it's the opposite of where someone controls the finances. I remember one lady in particular had told us that she had a shared bank account and her ex-partner would spend every single penny out of that. Both their wages went into it and she'd be left with no money to do anything. Interfering with education, training or employment. So even though victims are often not directly told you mustn't work, there are various circumstances where it just becomes too difficult for them to work. It's made too difficult. And then again, they don't have financial independence. Forcing the victim to commit benefit fraud, preventing them from claiming benefits. Also, a perpetrator of abuse may make a victim take out a loan in their name or run up debts in the other person's name as well. That's another form of economic abuse. So physiological emotional abuse. So that's things like using intimidating behavior, withholding affection, silent treatment. A lot of people don't realize that actually it's not okay for someone to just decide they're not going to speak to you for 3 days and you don't even know why. That's also a form of abuse as well. turning children and friends against the victim. So we've all heard of gaslighting now. That's something we didn't really hear about sort of 10 years ago. But gaslighting is a way that you mess with either that person's perception of reality or other people's perception of that person. And gaslighting can be used as a way to kind of turn people against the victim. So they might start doing things like saying, oh, I'm really worried about her. She's acting really strange, or he's drinking a lot, or he's gambling, or just saying things that really are not true to kind of turn people against them. Constant insults, repeated belittling, using social media to intimidate, blaming the victim for the abuse and injuries, minimizing, making the victim doubt their own sanity. So it's got gaslighting there, accusing victims of having affairs. So there's all kinds of kind of blame behavior that goes on as well. Coercive control. So coercive control, it's so difficult for people to spot this, especially at first. You know, gaslighting is used as a way to control people. If you imagine when you go into a relationship, you don't think, oh, I'm going to go into a relationship with somebody who's going to be manipulating me behind the scenes. So very often you won't even realize that's happening until some way down the line. And the likely impact on a person is that they will think, oh, that's a bit odd. Did I really say that? Why would they do that? Or they might even start to think there's something wrong with the other person or their memory, because they're so convincing in getting you to believe their version of events, or that something didn't happen. So it's really difficult to spot coercive control to begin with. And so even people from the outside will find it difficult to know that that's going on. Monitoring victims' time, online communications, controlling aspects of everyday life, where they can go, who they can see, what to wear, enforcing rules which humiliate, degrade, or dehumanize them, preventing access to transport. So again, this is another thing that we've heard a lot about, things like car keys being hidden, or someone taking the car when they know that they need the car for work, sort of purposely doing those things. Denying access to specialist support, preventing the victim from learning a language if they're from a different cultural community or country, and or making friends outside their ethnic background, making excuses and promises. So there's quite a few things there, some of which obviously you will be familiar with, but some of which it's good to have at the back of your mind just in case. So we're going to have a look at this. So coercive control is insidious. It's hard to identify if you are experiencing it directly. It can even be challenging to see if you are. So we're going to go through this. You may have seen similar things to this before. This is the power and control wheel. On the outside, it says physical violence and sexual abuse. The reason that's on the outside is because traditionally they were really the only kinds of abuse that were recognised. But we know now that there are so many other forms of very damaging abuse that exist under sort of the coercive control bracket. So first of all, using intimidation, making them afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying their property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. So using emotional abuse, putting them down, making them feel bad about themselves, calling them names, making them think they're crazy, playing mind games, humiliating them, and making them feel guilty. So put downs are not always really direct. Sometimes it's just about criticizing the way that somebody does absolutely everything. It might be the cooking, it might be the way they're parenting the children. So, you know, put downs can be done in a much more subtle way. Using isolation, so controlling what they do, who they see and talk to, what they read, where they go, and limiting their outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions. So isolation is very rarely something that happens overnight. Perpetrators of abuse can be very clever in how they isolate victims from families and friends. There are often reasons that are sold to the victim that are believable. They may move a victim out of the area because, I don't know, they've got a better job, the schools are better for the children, there's less crime, I don't know. Or it could be even things like, wouldn't it be better to put a bit of distance between you and your family because you don't get on very well? There's so many different ways that a perpetrator will sell a believable story to a victim to get them away from the people that are going to be protecting them, essentially. And it's done so slowly, and it will be that somewhere along the line, a victim will realise, actually, haven't really seen any of my friends, haven't spoken to anyone in a while. And also they'll realise that their community of people have gone, and the only people that they have are either that perpetrator or that perpetrator's people. That's very, very common that happens. And the tricky thing about that is perpetrator won't tell you, I'm isolating you from these people. It will be done in a really clever way. And you may believe that actually for a time that your life is better that way, or that the people that used to be around you are not good for you. So minimizing, denying and blaming. So making light of the abuse and not taking their concerns about it seriously. Saying the abuse didn't happen, shifting responsibility for abusive behavior, saying they caused it. When we read that in black and white, it seems ridiculous, doesn't it? It seems ridiculous that a person who is a victim of abuse could buy into the idea that actually it's their fault. But, you know, so often they will be told things like, well, I only got angry because you did X, or it's the children are doing this. And before long, that victim will start to try and walk on eggshells and adapt their behaviour to kind of pacify the abuser, really. Using children, so making them feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass her, threatening to take the children away. Or harass them, it's not just her. So using children is probably one of the most powerful tools that a perpetrator of abuse can use. So if you imagine, even if you're in a relationship where there is no domestic abuse and you have to break up your family, you are going to be carrying a lot of guilt anyway. If you are in a relationship where there is abuse and you know that once you make that known, maybe that perpetrator is going to get put in prison, or there's going to be some sort of consequence, and the children are going to become aware of that, it all becomes very difficult. Also, many perpetrators of abuse will tell victims, I will take the children, I will tell children's services that actually you're unstable and you will never see the children again. And if you think about this from a victim's point of view, obviously, if your children were to end up in foster care, that would be terrible. That would be anyone's nightmare. But what do you think is worse for a victim of abuse than thinking that their child might end up in foster care? What might be worse than that? What thought is worse than that? They could do the child or worse, but who might they end up with? The perpetrator. Yeah. So even if there's only 5 or 10% of you as a parent that thinks that your child might end up living with that perpetrator, you're probably going to try and stay in that relationship, because in your mind, you're thinking, well, I can offer better protection to my children by pacifying this abuser than if suddenly all the services are involved. And what if they believe what he or she has said about me, and then those children are gone? Even if there's a small percentage of you that believes that as a parent, the likelihood of you going and not knowing how you're going to protect yourself from that happening is very small. Also, visitation. So for any of you that ever work with separated families where they might be in court and there's sort of child arrangements, this is often a way in court, definitely, that we see that abuse is perpetrated using kind of child contact, or one parent will tell the children things deliberately that they know that they are going to repeat back to that other parent, which is hugely damaging for the children as well. So using male privilege. So I will say her here because obviously it's about male privilege. So treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define men and women's roles. So obviously everybody has different relationships. Everybody has different kind of ideas about what their relationship should look like. So I will admit I like to bake a cake in an apron, and I love for my husband to drag the bin out. I don't want to do that, but we're happy with that. We're fine with that. But what's not okay is when someone enforces certain roles onto somebody else when they don't want to do those things. So things like you must stay at home and not work, or you mustn't go out dressed in a certain way. However, obviously, we're aware that we live in a multicultural society, and in some cultures, it's absolutely the done thing to say to someone, you can't go out dressed like that, you can't speak to other men. What do you think about that? Do you think that that could complicate things in terms of sort of hiding abuse sometimes? What do you think? Yeah.
Sorry, we had a case a couple of years ago where this woman was basically, she had her passport taken away by the husband. The whole family was financial abuse. She didn't have access to her bank accounts, and she was told by her husband that that was all okay, and we kind of basically came to a conclusion that it wasn't okay. We had to sort of like arrange for her to go to a refuge. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
quite complicated.
So it can shield things, can't it? Because obviously we want to be respectful of everybody's cultures and understand that things are done differently. But sometimes it's just an expectation that usually in particular a woman might behave in a certain way in some cultures. And sometimes it makes it more difficult then for somebody to come forward if they're a victim of abuse. And also when we've worked with, because we work, like I said, weekly with the police, what they fed back to us is that on occasion, the wider family or community can become involved, and that can complicate things further. I saw that you had your hand up. Yeah.
I was just going to say that exact point actually. So it's not always just the husband, it can be the wider family, can be the community, and the stigma that's related to, if I walk out, what's going to happen,
Yeah.
what will happen to me, and what will people think of me. That can be a really major issue, especially in Asian communities.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes. So obviously we do want to be respectful of everybody, but sometimes we feel reluctant to challenge a situation because we don't want to offend somebody, which is also fair enough, but it does make things more tricky. Also, the reason that we're talking about this is because obviously we know that abuse does happen to men as well. So this isn't trying to say, you know, anything about men being kind of more less prone to abuse or anything like that. But I don't know if you'll be aware of this. There's been quite a few storylines in TV shows and things at the moment, but and also the police have kind of fed back that there's now becoming quite a problem amongst the younger male population with sort of misogyny now. So this is something that I hadn't really previously been aware of. We all think we're kind of progressing in the world and everybody's becoming equal, but it's almost like radicalization in a way, where people will jump on the bandwagon of, oh, women and girls get everything nowadays. What about men? What about boys? We're getting forgotten about. But that it's not just that, it's also being used to kind of push forward kind of misogynistic behaviours. Has anyone become aware of that, or is that something that you still feel that you don't realise is happening currently?
Yeah, my partner's a school teacher,
Oh,
and
okay.
he does report back about how shocking some of the attitudes are in younger boys
Yeah.
towards women, and some of the comments that they make in the classroom. Exactly as you say, you think that we've come so far, but actually that younger generation in certain aspects are,
Yeah. Which is really interesting because I literally had no idea about these. I've got two older boys who are now 22 and 20. And I remember when they were at secondary school, you know, they were so hot on talking about, you know, being respectful towards women. Obviously, we've got to be respectful towards both sexes, but it was a thing that was really, and I remember them talking about it and consent and all of these sorts of things. So I was really actually shocked to find out that there's still this undercurrent of this. And actually, the police did report to us in Hertfordshire that there is a big problem with misogynistic material on social media and things that's coming to the forefront now. So
I think it's also I think it's also people like Andrew Tate,
yes,
the influencer. Because I've also got
exactly.
2 boys, and like yourself, they've been through the whole, understanding, respecting women. But influences from people like Andrew Tate are really massive right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it is just something to be aware of as well. So using economic abuse, preventing them from getting a job, making them ask for money, giving them an allowance, taking their money, not letting them know about or have access to family income. So obviously, like we said, all relationships are different. Some people stay at home and they might have an allowance and they might be fine with that. But it's where we're talking about where money is drip fed and you're expected to explain where every single penny is gone. What did you spend that on? Didn't I give you £20 yesterday? It's that kind of thing. So using coercion and threats, so making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt them, threatening to leave them, to commit suicide, to report them to welfare, making them drop charges, and making them do illegal things. So obviously, sometimes police will become involved in these situations, but sometimes victim engagement is very difficult for the police. And sometimes a victim will make a statement, go to the police, and then they will drop the charges. What do you think might be some of the reasons that happens? They change their mind? What sort of things might make them change their mind? It's scary, so fear of the process. What else? This is exactly it. So they might have had an arrest or something, and they'll come back with, oh, I've realised I've got a problem, I'm going to get the help. All any victim wants is to hear those words. You're with somebody you fell in love with years ago, you remember all the wonderful times. All you want to hear is them say, I recognise this and I'm going to get help. And it's very easy for somebody to become stuck in that cycle. And believe that actually they're going to get the help this time. So something like that can make a victim drop charges or not want to kind of take things any further. But obviously the whole process is very scary, having to go through police processes and court and things like that. Okay, so impact on children. Obviously, children are impacted by domestic abuse, even if they're not directly involved in it. Very often children will live in a house and the parents will think they don't really know what's going on. But children nowadays particularly are very smart and they pick up on every little thing. So it's really important to consider children. The Adoption and Children's Act 2002 recognised witnessing domestic abuse as causing significant harm, the threshold that justifies compulsory intervention in family life in the best interests of the children. The new domestic abuse bill recognises that a child who sees or hears or experiences the effects of domestic abuse and is related to the person being abused or the perpetrator is also regarded as a victim of domestic abuse. That's a very long way of saying that even if you're not directly involved, you're still considered a victim if you live in that household. Okay, the facts. How many women will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime in the UK? It is estimated that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse. How do you feel about that? Anyone think that that seems like a lot, or you're surprised, or you're not surprised? What do you think? It probably is more. But there are issues over recognising that abuse is happening, but also people don't come forward. How often do police get called to incidents of domestic abuse? So every 30 seconds, yet it is estimated that less than 24% of domestic abuse crime is reported to the police. That's shocking, isn't it? We have a vast amount of men and women that come through our doors, sadly. It's great that we're there to support them, but it's a sad thing. But many of those people have never involved police, even though some of what they've been through has been really horrific. How many attempts does a victim make before leaving an abusive partner? What do you think? Have anyone willing to guess that? 10, you think? 4, 5? Let's have a look. It takes a woman on average 7 attempts before leaving. Leaving an abusive partner is a process. It's not a single act. So people may make plans to leave and not leave. They might make attempts to leave and then the perpetrator is going to win them back, or it just becomes too difficult. Or shockingly, a victim may still have feelings for the perpetrator. That's not unusual. How many children are affected by domestic abuse? What do you think? What did you say? Hi. I'm finding out some things here as well because I haven't done this training before. So 20% of children in the UK have lived with an adult perpetrating domestic abuse. That's 1 in 5 children. That's really high, isn't it? Really, really high. The facts. What percentage of LGBTQ plus victims of domestic abuse do not report their experiences to anyone? Let's have a look. 60 to 80%. I don't know why that would be. How much longer will Black, Asian and minority ethnic individuals suffer domestic abuse before seeking help compared to white British or Irish? It's 1.5 times longer. What is the annual cost of domestic abuse in the UK? 85 million. That's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Okay, expert by experience. So, what I would like you to do now is to just have some time listening to Jodie. So Jodie's going to tell you a bit about her experience of living with domestic abuse, but also she's going to tell you a bit about professionals that kind of also helped her, which will be very relevant to you. So Jodie, if you want to come up.
I am a survivor of domestic abuse. I am also a mother of 2 incredible children. And I'm here today to share a piece of my journey with you. Not to tell a sad story, but to help you understand the impacts that you can make, even when you don't see it right away. Living in an abusive relationship is something that I never imagined for myself. Like many survivors, I didn't see it coming all at once. Abuse doesn't usually start with bruises. It starts with words, with control disguised as concern. It starts with isolation, slowly cutting you off from your family, your friends, and eventually your own confidence. You start walking on eggshells without realizing you're doing it. You learn to second guess your tone, your clothes, your decisions. You learn that peace only lasts as long as your abuser allows it. I can only describe being in an abusive relationship like being trapped in a house with invisible walls. From the outside, people wonder, if it was that bad, why didn't you just leave? But the truth is, those walls aren't physical. They're made of fear, shame, control, manipulation, and hope. They keep you in long after any logical reason has disappeared. People only see fragments of your life, the smile, the school run, the moments you hold yourself together. But behind closed doors, there's fear, manipulation, control, and pain. It was the fear that kept me living it day after day. I met my ex when I was just 16 years old. At that age, you don't always recognise what control looks like. You think it's love when someone wants to know where you are all the time. You think jealousy means you're special. You think intensity is passion. And you tell yourself that their need for control is because they love you. He was 20 and I was a child trying to be an adult. I came from a very loving, stable home. My parents happily married for 35 years. They were horrified, but at the time I didn't understand why. Within a year, and at just 17, I'd moved in with him. And in the beginning, I thought that I was living the dream. He took me out for dinner, bought me expensive gifts, bought me all of my clothes. While my friends were going to college, I felt grown up, mature, and chosen. But now I see it clearly. He wasn't spoiling me, he was shaping me. He was isolating me before I even knew what isolation meant. Over the next few years, everything was taken from me. My friends, family, social life, my independence, my identity. And the most dangerous part, I didn't even realise it was happening. There was emotional, physical, coercive control, and financial abuse from the very beginning. The physical abuse, yes, it was terrifying.
but the mental and emotional abuse was just as damaging, sometimes more so. I was told that I was worthless, unlovable, lucky to have him, that no one would believe me and that no one would come to help. And for a long time, I believed him. Every movement was monitored, my phone checked daily, social media, messages, my location scrutinised. I had no safe way to reach out for help without risking escalation of his behaviour. Even jobs came and went because he made sure of it, turning up, making accusations, humiliating me until I had no choice but to leave. Every exit from employment made me more dependent on him, and still I thought I was the problem. When I became pregnant, my fear doubled. I wanted to protect my child. I wanted to be the perfect mum, hoping that if I was perfect enough, he might finally change. But having a baby meant I had someone else to protect, and it meant my attention wasn't solely on him. This made him even more abusive, and I just accepted it. Because my biggest fear wasn't him hurting me, it was him hurting our child. The physical violence became less frequent after the birth, not because he was changing, but because it didn't fit into his game. Instead, he used control. He'd withhold money, he'd lock us in the house, he dictated every move. I wasn't living anymore, I was just surviving every day. I thought my children were unaware, but they weren't. My son, at just the age of 2, would ask me to sleep in his bed so Daddy couldn't get to me over night time. Even then, I stayed. Not because I didn't love my children, but because I thought that taking the abuse kept them safe. So why did I finally leave? It wasn't a punch, it wasn't a threat. It was my son. At just the age of 3, one day he spoke to his preschool teacher. He said things that no child should ever have to say. When the school contacted me, hearing those words, knowing they came from my child, hit me like a thunderbolt. It was terrifying, humiliating, but also life-saving. Because I could no longer hide behind excuses. If my son was speaking up, it meant he had seen the truth. It meant the pain wasn't just mine anymore, it was becoming his. And then something extraordinary happened. His teacher became the lifeline I didn't know that I needed. She didn't rush me, she didn't overwhelm me. She didn't hand me a booklet or push me to act immediately. She simply offered me a safe space, a room where I could breathe without being watched, where I could sit and cry without being judged. It was the first time that I could think clearly. She supported me when I needed support and backed off when I needed time. She helped me find the courage to reach out to my mum, a call that I would never have made without her. Everything that teacher did was untraceable to him, and that was the only way I could be helped. Professionals need to understand this. Sometimes the safest help is the quietest help. It isn't loud interventions, it isn't ultimatums. It's noticing, it's patience, it's allowing a survivor to feel strong enough to speak. That teacher, she didn't just listen to me, she changed my life. Now, when I finally left, it was during lockdown. I confronted my ex about what our son had said to his teacher. I needed to know if he could change, not for me, but for our children. He showed his true colours. He'd become violent in a way that was different, more dangerous, more relentless. Something in him changed, and something in me did too. I realised this was only going to end one way, and I couldn't leave my children without a mum. I couldn't let them grow up in the hands of a man who had already destroyed me. The next morning when he went to work, I took my children and I left. He didn't know, he didn't expect it. But I wasn't waiting for him to see how far he would go. I left to save my children, I left to survive. But leaving wasn't the end of the nightmare, it was just the beginning of a new one. I struggled massively with my newfound freedom. I didn't know how to make decisions anymore. I didn't know how to be a parent without fear. I didn't know whether to eat, sleep, rest, or keep moving. My nervous system was completely shattered. Anxiety consumed me, and the fear that my children would be taken away from me was constant. I had escaped the relationship, but the trauma was still living inside me. And this is where I want to speak honestly about the system, because although professionals helped me, the system as a whole did not. There were gaps everywhere, calls for help that didn't meet the threshold, professionals who only saw snapshots of my life, not the full picture. agencies that didn't communicate with each other, times when I wasn't believed or told there wasn't enough evidence, the expectation that I should prove the abuse instead of being protected from it, the assumption that because he wasn't hitting me right now, I wasn't at risk. After leaving, when he began harassing me, turning up at my property, continuing the control through the children, making allegations, again, it didn't meet the threshold. I felt invisible. I felt unprotected. I felt like leaving had put me and the children at more risk, not less. There are brilliant professionals within the system, people who genuinely care, but the system in itself is inconsistent, overstretched, and often reactive instead of proactive. But I was lucky enough to find Future Living, and it changed everything for me. Future Living was the turning point. It was the first time I was surrounded by people who understood the trauma, the fear, the guilt, the shame, and the complete loss of identity that comes with the abuse. Future Living didn't just give me back my life, they gave me a voice. They gave me therapy that helped understand what has happened to me. They helped rebuild my confidence, my independence, and my understanding of what a healthy relationship is. They helped me become me again. They helped me become a mum again, a woman, and finally, a survivor. Now, this is where your roles as parents, siblings, friends, or employees matter so much. Survivors don't need you to fix everything. They just need you to see them. Believe the victims the first time, even when their story doesn't sound right. Trauma does that to you. Look beyond the snapshot. Abuse rarely shows in one moment. Respect how dangerous leaving is. Communicate across services. Information sharing can save lives. Give options, not pressure. Control has been taken from survivors. They don't need any more taken from them. See the children. They hear, feel, and absorb everything. And a reminder, sometimes the safest help is the quietest help, just like that teacher who helped me. I am only a survivor today because someone believed me, because someone listened quietly, because Future Living supported me, because I found the courage to walk away. But most importantly, it was because my children needed me. Every survivor you meet has the same potential. You may not always see the impact of your actions, but trust me, you are planting a seed of safety, hope, and strength that will continue long after your involvement ends. So thank you for being the people that can stand in the gaps so survivors don't keep falling through.
Thank you to Jodie for that brilliant speech that you just made. Obviously, it's really difficult to listen to things like that, isn't it? Obviously, Jodie's in a really positive place now. When we do trainings, we often invite people to just share any thoughts about what they've heard. It's entirely up to you whether you'd like to do that, but if you have any thoughts or questions for Jodie, she's more than happy to answer them. What were your thoughts after hearing that? Thank you. Any other thoughts? I think Jodie said some really significant things there, and put it in a way that I've not really thought about before. And it's not always the big loud interventions, and I would really second that. It's sometimes those really quiet interventions. Are you really okay? Is there anybody that I can speak to? Do you need a minute to sit down? Sometimes when somebody asks you, are you actually okay? That might be the moment that you actually think, well, I can't actually pretend I'm okay, and I'm going to just tell somebody what's happening. And it just, there's always this, when we talk about safeguarding, you'll hear a lot that safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. And I feel the same way about this. that it doesn't matter. It can be a random person in any professional role, or even not in a professional role, that actually is going to be the person that plants that seed that Jodie was talking about. Jodie, you said that actually when you left, it was really difficult. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about what that was like when you left and why that was so difficult.
Yeah, so it was fear, the unknown. So it was the fear and the unknown when I left. I didn't know where I was going to live, what was going to happen to the children. I didn't know what support was actually out there for me. I contacted the police and it wasn't a great experience either. It did end on a good note with the police, but the very beginning wasn't great. I had in my mind constantly, from what my ex had told me, that if I contacted the police, social services would get involved. Because I had allowed the abuse to continue, I would be just as much to blame. Social services would be coming to take my children. And I believed that for a real long time. The fear that comes with that, if you're not there to protect your children, who is going to? I felt that staying in the relationship kept them safer than leaving. When you're in that relationship, you can sort of control the situation. You have a sense of control. You know what sort of day it's going to be within a few minutes of being awake. You can try and calm your abuser. When you've left and you're on your own, it's that unknown of fear which just consume you. And without the right help, it just becomes too overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people jump straight to sort of things like police intervention. But Jodie, tell us about what would happen if you called the police and anything did happen. What would what would be the result of that?
So when I was in the relationship in the very beginning, I did call the police. Occasionally he would be arrested only to be released the next day. There was no safeguarding measures put in place. There was nothing there to protect me. I learned very quickly that I could actually safeguard myself better than what the police could. I could keep myself safe better than the police. It was only once I had left and I had left the house with the children. My ex had absolutely lost everything. He had nothing else to lose. He was sending threats to kill us, to come and find us. And it was at that time I thought, I need the police to listen to me. I can't do any more than what I've done. I need someone to help. And it took a lot of people and a lot of calls, a lot, to actually get the right support that we needed.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie. So for a lot of victims, they can't imagine how they're going to get away with it. I'm going to put it like that. They can't imagine how they're going to leave this person, how if they've got children, they're going to take the children, that police are going to maybe get involved. Obviously, this isn't everybody's situation, but for some people, that father or mother of the child might be imprisoned. What are they going to do with all of this stuff? If they're not, if there's no actual real consequence and they're just arrested and then let out again, they're out there. You don't know where they are. You don't know what they're going to do. And like Jodie said, when somebody has lost anything, everything, they have nothing else to lose. And that's when the perpetrator behavior is going to escalate. So we all wonder, why didn't this person leave? Why didn't they go? Why didn't they just ask for help? But being able to do that, whether you've got children or not, and still keep yourself safe, it's actually terrifying. And to live with that level of fear is sometimes a worse thought than actually just trying to stay and navigate the relationship. I think it's a good time for a break, if that's okay. So we're going to take a break. How long will the break be for? 10 minutes? Yeah. So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll pick up, if that's okay. Okay. Welcome back. Hope you had a good break. So we're going to move on now with some things that might help you, hopefully, in your roles. So, I'm going to ask you this first before I put that thing on the screen. So, for victims of domestic abuse, there are quite a lot of barriers to things like making reports or getting interventions or telling people. What do you think are some of the barriers? Why do people kind of not want to sometimes get outside involvement? What do you think? Yes, they might be scared of the consequences from the perpetrator. I think that's quite a big thing, isn't it? Anything else that makes them afraid maybe to get outside services or the police involved?
Maybe like not being believed as well. Sort of that came through a bit in Jodie's story, that fear that you won't be listened to, and it will just be ignored.
Absolutely. So sometimes people fear that they won't be believed. They might have been told that. They might be confused actually as to whether there is abuse going on. What else do you think is a barrier to involving outside services? Right. So yes, you're going to be telling people this is what I've been putting up with for the last however many years. This is what I've been letting my children put up with for all these years. This is the things that people will fear being judged, don't they? What else do you think could be a barrier? Yeah. Yeah. So that whole process of having to retell the story to different people, even with the police, you might be retelling the same story to different officers, different departments. What else do you think is a barrier?
I think it's about
Yes, so people feel like literally no one can help them. They feel like no one can help them. There's no point. Especially if, like the Jodie situation, where there were repeat calls to the police and nobody even said to her, are you in an abusive relationship or is there anything that you need? So if nothing is happening, this seems like there's no point sometimes. What else? Somebody else was trying to speak, I think.
Fear of not being understood.
Oh wow.
The fear of not being understood. In what sense? I'll come back to you. In what sense?
They're not understanding what they've been going through and just thinking, oh, it's not abuse. Like there are different types of abuse, but the people they are explaining to not understanding their point of view, where they are coming from, what they're
Yeah, so people fearing that somebody else might not understand. Because if you're trying to explain that somebody's controlling you, it's really difficult to articulate that in a way that people are going to recognize it as abuse. When you're in it and you can feel it, it's slightly different, but it can be really difficult to get people to understand actually what it's like and where you're coming from.
Feels to be very anticlimactic now because I'll be like, I think it's like Jodie touched on it about sometimes knowing where to go. So you've gone to the police, you haven't felt the police have been the best response the first time. If you're not in this kind of world, how do you know what other support is out there? And then it's that fear of confidentiality
Yeah.
of how can they support you? So I think it's knowing what local services are.
Yeah. So if you don't know about how you can get support or what's going to happen, then that's probably going to stop you because you're going to think, well, once I tell somebody, this is going to become real, and then I'm going to be expected to do something. What am I going to do now? Anything else that you can think of?
Finances.
Finances. Yeah, he said that. That was you. Yeah. So, in what way do you think finances will prevent somebody
Just
from?
not being able to support yourself because of the control that's already in place, or just being alone.
Yeah, how can you escape and go somewhere, and especially if you've got children as well, with no money? Jodie, I'm going to ask you, what were your barriers to telling other people?
The most important one I think I had was the children. I was so concerned that the police would want to interview them. How much were they actually aware of? Are the police going to make it worse for me with the children? what are people going to be saying to the children? Are the school going to want to know? It's something that I'd managed to keep to myself, what I've been going for. Everyone was then going to know. And it was going to be them comments of, why didn't you just leave? How could you have no self-respect to put up with that for so many years? It was the judgment that I thought that I was going to get from friends and family. We warned you when you were 16. Why didn't you listen to us? Obviously, this was all just in my head. But at that time, it was, if I can keep this to myself, if I can just carry on a few more weeks, a few more months, it will get better. And of course it didn't. I needed the support and I needed to reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie. So let's have a look what it says up here. So barriers to reporting. So fear, obviously, fear of the unknown, fear of the abuser, that once you've told, you know, you might be in a lot of trouble, especially if nothing is actually done, there's no actual legal consequence. Love, so you might still love the perpetrator. That's not that unusual. What we have to remember is we've all heard of narcissism now. Again, years ago, we didn't really hear about narcissism or gaslighting. People use the word narcissist too much. It's an actual personality disorder, okay? It's not just somebody who's a little bit mean or a bit selfish, but lots of perpetrators of abuse do have narcissistic traits. And I've completely forgotten why I'm telling you that. And oh yes, I've remembered. And so when you go into a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, they will sell you a sob story. This is very common. Oh, I was treated really badly by my family. There's always something wrong with all the other people. And this stuff is so believable that a victim will often write off these abusive behaviors to the fact that this person has had a really raw deal in their life, which might be true, but they will constantly be saying to themselves, oh, it's because he had this awful treatment by his parents, or this or that, or he was cheated on a lot, or she was cheated on a lot by their last partner, this is why. And if I just love this person enough and I put in enough effort into this person, I'm definitely going to be the one to change this. That sounds ridiculous from the outside because we know we can't really change people like that. But this is the problem. So, you know, people will stay in these relationships because they believe that actually this person's just a bit broken, which might be true, and that they might be able to fix this person. Disability. So if you've got some sort of disability, whether that's a physical disability or you may have some sort of neurodiversity, that might also be a barrier to you being able to sort of leave. Family pressures. So it could be extended family. Do you really want the children to find out that their mum or dad has done this? Think about what it's going to do to them. It can be things like that. Or just general pressures of family life that make it really difficult for you to leave or to report. The children, obviously, that's there in big because that has so many different impacts. The children finding out, you know, don't get me wrong, there are parents out there that can't wait to unfortunately tell their children how bad the other parent is. But on the other hand, there are a lot of people that don't want their child to know actually what that other parent has done. But also the impact of, are children's services going to come and take my children away? So many people actually believe that the minute they make a call to the police, that children's services are going to come and take the children, and they really do believe that. And for a lot of people, they're not going to make that call or involve outside people if they think that's a risk. Shame, so that's another one. You know, having to admit that you've put up with behaviours that are unacceptable, that you've allowed somebody to treat you. The amount of times that we hear that when we run our groups, why did I do it? Why did I put up with it for so long? I don't know why I did this. There's nowhere to go. So if you've got no money, or, you know, we all know that housing can be really difficult. What are you going to do if you have to flee your home? What are you going to do then? You know, for a lot of people, they may be told, actually, you need to go into a refuge. and then you're going to be miles from your support network, from your home, from your job. You know, unless you are really, really thinking that that perpetrator is coming for you in a big way, it's really unlikely that you're going to want to have to explain to your children, we're going to move to Manchester now, and we're going to leave all your friends, all our family. Obviously, refuges are a great place in terms of helping to protect people, but that's a really difficult decision for somebody to make, to just go and leave everybody they know and everything they know. So having somewhere to go, you know, is a real problem. Denial. So they're writing off this behaviour to this tough life this other person's had. Oh, it's not really that bad. Distrusting the police and other services. So unfortunately, we do hear a lot of very negative experiences that our survivors have had with the police. We hear loads of positive ones as well, but we do hear a lot of negative experiences. And obviously the media has a lot to do with this as well. People feel afraid to contact the police and to have to go through that process. Lack of resources and information. So again, if you do not know how you're going to be able to keep yourself safe once you're out of that relationship, why would you do that? If you don't know that maybe someone could be put on bail, or you might be able to get a non-molestation order or an occupation order, if you don't know any of those things, what is the likelihood that you're actually going to try and leave that relationship? So resources and information are really important. So gaslighting. So if you've been a victim of gaslighting, you tend to not really know what's actually happening from what's really happening, if that makes sense. So we have another lady that speaks sometimes when we do the police training, and she tells the story that her house keys kept going missing repeatedly, and she kept thinking, oh, I've lost the house keys. Her husband would be saying, oh, you know, you're always just losing things. And she lived in the house with her husband while they were trying to sell the house, and it was really difficult because he was constantly abusive all of the time to her and her teenage children. And she says that on the day that she left the house, he handed her 12 sets of keys that he had taken from her bag. Now, nobody believes that they're going to go into a relationship with somebody who's actually going to do that. It's just ludicrous. We don't want to believe that people are capable of intentionally doing things like that. So when those things would happen, because she was a victim of gaslighting, she wouldn't know. She'd think it was her, or maybe it was me because I was a bit grumpy this morning, or she was really made to believe that everything was because of her behaviour and the children's behaviour. And when you think about that, and you maybe sort of mix it in with somebody who already has mental health issues, neurodiversity, all of those things together with gaslighting on top, that can make it so difficult for somebody to know what's reality from what's not. Cultural religion. So we've had ladies come on our programs who said, in our culture, we just don't leave our marriages. We stay no matter what. And they have managed to leave that. And that's really difficult because sometimes it means going against your culture, your belief, your family, your support system. And that's really hard. Economic barriers. So things like not having a lot of money, not having the potential to earn, maybe you've never had a career or a job. Yeah, so, you know, and that's just some of the things. So that's quite a lot of things, isn't it, that can stop somebody from wanting to leave. It seems really simple from the outside to say to somebody, why don't you just leave? Why didn't you just leave? But when you're in the relationship, it's just so complicated to try and think about how you're going to escape this and how you're going to keep yourself safe. Okay, so how can you help? What do you think? Obviously, you've all got different roles. I don't know what all of your roles are, but what do you think are some of the things that you can do if you come into contact with victims of domestic abuse, whether it might be a colleague at work or somebody that you're supporting in some other way with your job role? What do you think are some of the things that you can do that might help that person? Yeah, so listening and empathy are definitely very significant. What else do you think would be important for you to do or provide?
Support.
support.
websites, or I know pamphlets and leaflets are a bit back in the day now, but
Yeah,
websites.
so
are really-
signposting in a way to, did you know these people exist? No pressure, but just in case. Anything else you think is really
I think
important?
patience, like what Jodie said, that the teacher that she spoke to, it was like a bit of a drip feed in that kind of at times she backed off when she needed to, but also was just patient with her until it felt the right time to move things forward.
Yeah, patience is so important. There are people that think, oh, I don't know why this person just doesn't leave this relationship. I've had enough of them. I'm going to distance myself from that. But actually, that's not really helpful. So, yeah, patience is really important. Anything else that you think might help?
Providing a safe space.
Providing a safe space, definitely. And that can be anywhere, can't it? But there are things that will make that space feel safe. What do you think?
I was going to say similar to Christine. So working here at the council, there's kind of an excuse for somebody to come in. So you could use here as a safe space to discuss council tax, your voting card, whatever. So trying to sort of build up trust.
Yeah. So if we go to somebody, oh, I think you might be a victim of domestic abuse, come in and see me, they're likely to go, oh, I'm not going to go in. But if you said something like, well, why don't you just pop in and we can chat about this in person, it might give you the opportunity to just say, do you know, I just wondered, is everything okay at home, or what's really happening? And they might feel more able to talk to you. So it's providing not just a safe space, but it's the opportunity, isn't it? Creating an opportunity.
And to allow them to come in on their own.
Yeah.
So at a time that's convenient to them.
Yeah.
They know that they're not being looked at or checked on.
I think if you're any part of the cog in helping somebody to escape an abusive relationship, it is really important that there's a lot of engineering that goes on in terms of providing the right opportunities when people are going to be on their own. Sometimes it's the school, sometimes it is a variety of services that speak to each other and say, do you know, I'm not sure about this person. You know, if you're not going to be exactly breaking confidentiality by giving too much information, sometimes you can, you know, work together, can't you, with other departments if you don't feel that something is right. So yes. So Jodie, what do you think? Because obviously you've had involvement with many different professionals in different capacities. What do you think that professionals can do to help?
I think I just wanted someone to listen and to just try and understand what I was actually going through. I just needed someone to understand all of that fear, that I wasn't just being dramatic, that there's a reason behind the way I was acting at that time. It was just all out of fear. I just wanted someone to say, I can see what you're going through. Let me try and help you. What do you want from me? For someone to give me the control back a little. For so long, I'd been told what to do, where to go, how to feel. For someone to actually ask, what do you want? How can I help you? That would have made a real difference to me when I'd left.
Yeah. So I think you talked about control there, and like for a lot of victims, obviously they are controlled. And the thought of somebody else coming in and then doing something where you might lose control, it's very scary. So it's important that that person is left with an element of control. So it's this is pinched from somewhere else. So there's a model that it's called AIM, and it stands for Acknowledge, Identify, and Move. So it's about acknowledging somebody's feelings, what they're going through, identifying what is it that you need, and then doing something that's going to help move that situation on, but sort of in partnership with them, not obviously taking it on yourself. So sometimes you can't fix a situation, but you can acknowledge what that person's going through, what they're feeling. You can help them to identify what do you need at this point, and you can help to move them from whatever stuck position they're in, even if it's you're only moving them an inch. Yeah.
If I may, can I just ask perhaps a question of you both and of Jodie? One of the things when we do training and briefing about safeguarding generally, and we talk to our councillors, the elected members, about things, some members and indeed some people, they've got an expectation or their desire to jump straight in fix this, do this. I'm kind of promising immediately to change the world, kind of thing. I'm just wondering, in a way, perhaps Jodie, when you first started talking with the teacher that you talked about, was the teacher saying, I'm going to make it all better tomorrow? Did you expect them to say that? Did you want them to say that?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I think the teacher, she was so good. She had a real understanding of what abuse was, because she never rushed me. She never pushed me. She never made me promises to say, I'm going to get you out there. I'm going to be your hero. She wasn't. She knew that the leaving had to be down to me. She couldn't make that decision for me. She couldn't put that on me. Because if I didn't truly believe it, I wouldn't have left. I'd still be there now. I had to believe it myself. And I think she just gave me that time to reflect, but she would also, in a helpful, non-judgmental way, say, these behaviours I'm noticing, do you know that this is coercive control? I'd never heard of coercive control. I didn't know what it was. But she very gently sort of said, go and have a little look at what this is. See if you can identify any of it. But in a way that I had to go and do it. She may have told me, have a look, but it was still me that had to make that decision to leave. And she never pushed me. And she never tried to make me do it in a way that I didn't feel ready. And that was what was different about her.
Thank you, Jodie. I think that's really significant what you've said there, because just because we're being patient doesn't mean we can't call out things that we see that are concerning. So what the teacher did was she said, actually, do you know, if this is what's happening, that's not really okay, but it's still up to you what you do about this. So because sometimes people won't. I worked for a time for children's services, and I would have to have those conversations with people sometimes, where I used to say, what you're telling me is concerning me a bit, because that's not really okay if that person's stopping professionals coming to the house or stopping you going out. And I would just leave it at that. I wouldn't say, so you must do this or that. But sometimes people do need to hear, do you know, that's worrying me a bit, or that's concerning me a bit. That isn't really okay, because what you don't want to do is kind of collude with somebody who is being treated really badly and sit there saying nothing, because that's not all right either. But we don't want to push somebody, because we might push them away. Let's have a look on here. So what victims want. So informed about what's going to happen next. Like we spoke about earlier, if somebody doesn't know how they're going to safeguard themselves, how they're going to survive, how they're going to be able to live beyond this relationship, the likelihood is they're not going to do that. To be believed. So many victims of abuse are told that they won't be believed. And also it's really important to remember this, that once someone has recognized that they are in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, they will think that actually that person is some sort of evil genius, that absolutely every professional is going to hang on their every word and believe them, when actually, just like we see in court, when you're coming to something from the outside, sometimes you look and you just think this person is believable, but what they're saying doesn't make any sense. But victims don't always recognize that. They automatically think, I believed them. Everybody is going to believe what they say. You don't, the amount of times we hear this phrase, you don't know what they're like. They're so manipulative and they really believe this. So it's important that they feel believed. You might not always be able to say to somebody, yes, this is definitely abuse, but you can say, if what you're saying is this, then that's controlling behavior. You can say that. You're not saying to them, you're definitely in an abusive relationship. You can say this kind of behavior, like Jodie was saying, the teacher said to her, do you know about coercive control? Have a look, read about it, see if you think there's anything familiar. Validated. So again, that comes in with, because sometimes victims are looking for somebody to say, actually, that is abuse, that isn't okay, that's you know, that's not something that's normal. In a way, they are sometimes looking for some sort of validation. The other lady who sometimes speaks as well, she talks about when she made a call to the police the first time, and the response she got from the call taker was that there was very little reaction. Obviously, she wasn't expecting someone to go, oh my God, that's terrible, because obviously it's their job every day that they're doing. But it was kind of like, okay, so what happened next? Is that it? Sort of thing. And she was kind of waiting for someone to have some sort of response, I suppose. But because there was nothing, she kind of felt like, oh, I think I've wasted their time. Don't seem to be taking this seriously. So many victims are kind of looking for some sort of response or words or reaction or something to say, do you know, you're not crazy. This actually is not really a normal thing that you're experiencing. They want to feel that you want to help. So this sounds silly because most people do want to help victims of domestic abuse, but sometimes there are things that happen. I'm going to tell you a short story about somebody who was coming to one of our groups. And the story goes like this. She received, and before I tell you this story, I'm not going to go into the details of the abuse, but it was horrific. It was absolutely horrific, the abuse that she suffered with her ex-partner. And she's got lifelong injuries. And basically, she was contacted by Universal Credit, who told her, we're going to stop your payments because you're on Companies House as owning half a business with obviously her ex, who she hasn't seen in years and doesn't speak to or have any contact with. She tried to explain that to them. This is nothing to do with me. I never was part of this business. He just put me on. I don't receive any money. This person already has many mental health issues because of what she's been through. She was told by Universal Credit, you need to contact him and ask him to remove you from Companies House. She said, well, I can't do that. I can't speak to him. And she explained that actually they were very short, very rude, and they just told her that's what you've got to do. She was then made to gather 5 years worth of bank statements. So she spent 3 days doing this. And it still wasn't enough. She spoke to the housing, who told her that she could be made homeless, evicted the following week. And again, the same story, you need to really make contact with your ex and get your name removed. Now, how can you imagine what that must be like for that victim? She feels her benefits are stopped. She's got no money. She's got really poor mental health issue anyway. She's got children. She's spoken to the council. The council have said, oh, we can't do any, what do you expect us to do, was what she was told. And actually, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but she is being evicted from her property and she still hasn't been able to satisfy them. So what she said to us was, it wasn't necessarily that she expected them to be able to do anything, but it was just the attitudes and the treatment of these members of staff who were just basically saying, what do you expect us to do? You need to go away and sort it out. You need to speak to him. This is the only way. When it's somebody that she's terrified of, who's committed crimes, who's harmed her and her family. So people need to know how they can stay protected. Because if they don't know how they're going to stay protected, then it's no good, you know? So sometimes it isn't about what you can do. And it's the same thing that we tell the police. Sometimes it's just about the listening and the empathy and acknowledging that this is a really difficult situation. Can you think of anyone else that might be able to help you with this? Just even anything like that. And we know this is about individuals. It's not about organisations exactly. Like in any walk of life, you get some people that have really good listening and empathy skills and other people that their agenda is something different, probably. They probably get loads of calls from people, you know, with their stories and their dramas every day. So you can get empathy fatigue as well, you know, being a professional. So they really want to feel that you want to help. That lady felt like nobody really wanted to help her. To be listened to, you talked about how important that is. Sometimes we can feel like we must say something that's going to be impactful or make a difference, but actually just that listening is so significant, and genuine empathy. So empathy isn't about, oh, poor you, how terrible. We might be thinking that, but it's actually really about trying to understand that person's life and their experience and what's difficult for them and what it is they need. Empathy is all of those things. What do you think about that? Do you think that as a professional, because obviously everybody's got demands on their services and their roles and everyone's really busy, Do you think that those things are doable, or do you think things get in the way of being able to do all of these things? What do you think? I think you've put that very nicely. What do other people think? Realistically, we're human beings, aren't we, though? What?
I was just going to say, I think it was, what was the turn of phrase you used, like empathy fatigue? I think the reality, and my background is housing, whatever, that there can be, and I've worked in London boroughs, there are so many people phoning up, coming through the door, hearing so much stuff. With the pressure on it, it at times can be difficult to do those things because you've got a constant stream of people saying lots of things and trying to sift through that. I'll be just as a whatever. Just speaking of myself, I worked in London Borough for 11 years, and at the end of it, I really did feel quite jaded, and I was glad to get out of it, to be honest. And I moved to smaller authorities, and I've always said since, that was about 10 years ago, I would do everything to stop myself falling into getting into that position again, and to hopefully support members of the team to not get into that as well. But I do recognise that really is, it is a reality.
And it's no joke if you're dealing with the same thing day in, day out. And I won't be afraid to say this, because sometimes when people make these claims, they're not genuine. Just like when people come to court, sometimes people have got a different agenda. They want to move, so they will say there's been domestic abuse. And it really is terrible that people will do these things, but they do, and we all know it. And we all know that people come to court and they lie. So sometimes you have maybe a stream of things where you're thinking, is this even really, this doesn't make sense what they're saying, and you might automatically go into that mindset. But I think it's like what you're saying, we might miss something when we do that. We're all guilty of it. Yeah, we have to treat things as they come, don't they? Yeah. 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 No. Yeah, I suppose it's going back to what that individual needs and what can be realistically offered, doesn't it? Okay, so let's have a look. Recognize things you may see. So sometimes there are signs, more subtle signs that you might recognize. So things like difficulty sitting in a chair, that could be because of unseen injuries. Unexplained injuries or clothes that cover up their body, long sleeves, high neck scarves. When we did the police training, one of the officers told a story about how they went to a lady's house or a family's house, and the house was absolutely immaculate, and it was about 30 degrees, and she was dressed in head to toe in like joggers, and they thought that was a bit suspicious, and it was because she was concealing marks. Fidgety, nervous, jumpy, or strong emotions or behaviour that seem out of character. Seems lonely, withdrawn, isolated, or fearful. Constantly checking phone, receiving personal texts and calls. So sometimes perpetrators will constantly be contacting a victim. Where are you? Ringing them every 5 minutes. If they don't answer the phone, it's constantly ringing, things like this. Like we said, this might not be someone you're working with. This could be a colleague or somebody that you know. Avoiding or having a strong reaction to calls, texts, and emails. Partner always accompanying them to meetings or waiting outside. This is something, again, I remember once when I worked with Children's Services and we were talking about how sometimes you have to orchestrate things. And we set up a meeting at the school, and then he said he was coming. So I was ringing the police going, oh no, he says he's coming now. What are we going to do? So we're all trying to figure out how we can get this person by themselves, because perpetrators will often not leave a victim on their own. They will go to the doctors, to the school, to every single meeting, because they want to know everything that's going on. And it will be sold to the victim sometimes as, oh, but you forget things, or, you know, I just want to be there to support you. They may have stopped working or attending education. Another thing that people do is they don't want to go home from work. So they might stay in the office longer and longer, and you might be thinking, why does this person just go home? I remember years ago, when I was much younger, somebody saying to me, if somebody's at work, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to tell them to go home, you don't know what they're going home to. So just don't say anything. There's a reason they're still there. Things like, so this is recognizing things you might hear. He always gets angry when I don't answer his calls right away. It might not even be that. It might be, oh, he's a bit impatient if I don't answer, or she's a bit impatient if I don't answer the phone straight away. I need to let my partner know where I am. They manage all the money. I'm just not good with it, apparently. That's not me, just saying that. She says I'm too sensitive. I wouldn't have said that if I knew this was up there. She says I'm too sensitive. I'm always crying. So victims hear that a lot. Oh, you're just too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. Oh, you have a reaction to every little thing. He doesn't like my friends. I don't see them that much anymore. She says things in the heat of the moment, like she'll leave or take the kids, but she doesn't really mean it. So there might just be odd sentences that sometimes people say as a throwaway that you can kind of pick up that something doesn't sit quite right there. But sometimes it's strange to say, it's just a feeling you'll get about somebody that something isn't right. You might just get a sense that something isn't right. Maybe that person never talks about what happens at home. That can be, you know, a clue. If somebody never talks about their home life, and you see them all the time, that can be a sign that something's not quite right. Respond, do not. Okay. So do not discuss things in a busy or unsuitable environment. Don't tell the victim to leave. This may not be something they want to do, and leaving is risky. So currently, I'm in contact with somebody who's been trying to leave a very abusive relationship for over a year now, and she has a daughter who's 13. And at one point, the police were called, he was arrested, he was bailed for 3 months, and because of certain circumstances, he's ended up back at the house now. And the worst thing that I could do is to say, why did you do that? Why did you not just leave? I will message her maybe once every 3 weeks, just checking in, seeing if you're okay. Because she knows that when she's ready to leave, I'm there with the help, the support, the signposting. But that day is not going to be today, and there's nothing I can do about that. And like Jodie was saying about that teacher, it's about kind of that quiet intervention. I'm here. This is, if anything happens, these are the people to call if something happens to you in the middle of the night, just in case. You know, we can be concerned, we can show concern, but actually the minute we start saying, why don't you just leave, do this, do that, come on, you must get out of this situation, as much as we might feel that, if that person can't leave, or they're not ready, or it's too dangerous, what's going to happen then is when that person's gone back, or the perpetrator has come back, or something has happened, they're going to distance themselves from us. And it's much more important that we stay in loose contact, and we kind of check in with that person, and we're not judging them for not leaving. Those sorts of things are really important. It's important that, because it can be very easy as well. If you know someone's gone back to a relationship, you think, oh, this is a bit awkward, I'll just kind of leave them alone. But no, a text, a call every now and again. Hi, just checking that you're okay. Is there anything you need from me? Okay, bye. So that that person knows that you're still there for them, even though they've made that choice not to leave at that particular point. That's kind of what real support is. Don't be judgmental. Why haven't you left? Why didn't you call the police? Don't press the victim for unnecessary details. Interrupt or correct the victim when they are telling you their story. Don't promise to keep secrets or make a promise you cannot keep. Like we said, safeguarding adult or child is everybody's responsibility. Everybody has a duty of care. If we hear something that we know puts that person in danger, then we can't keep that stuff to ourselves. We might share it with a line manager or someone that's going to support us with what to do. But it's really important that we don't close our ears and eyes if we feel that something is going on, and we definitely don't tell somebody, it's just between me and you. Do not contact the alleged abuser. I don't think people would ever do that. Assume that their partner will be of the opposite sex, because I think many of us are still guilty of that, because in the majority of cases, that is the way that it is. Respond, things you could say. You did a really good thing telling me. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm really pleased that you felt that you could, that sort of thing. It's very common. It happens too. So I think you have to be careful with this one, because you don't want to seem like, oh, you know, this happens to everyone. I think that could have been written slightly differently. But I think that's about saying this might not be as unusual as you think. But that doesn't mean to say that it's not really difficult, and it doesn't mean that it's okay. We can say those things. Nobody deserves to be abused, and you're not to blame. Victims self-blame. They are blamed by the perpetrator. They may be blamed by other people that the perpetrator has brought on board with them. So it's really important that they don't, because we can say a lot of indirect things that show judgment, things like, why didn't you leave? Most people don't mean, why didn't you leave, you idiot, when they say that. What they mean is, oh my goodness, why didn't you leave? But to someone who's been through that, they will automatically think they're judging me. So we have to be careful of those things. You are not responsible for the abuse, only the abuser is. What would you like to do? What can I do to help? So is there anything I can do to help you? Is there anybody that you can call to help you? If they feel like they can't tell anyone, you can say, what are you worried about? If you tell your parents, or what are you worried is going to happen? So you can ask them those things. Can I help to find you support? They might say no, but they might be okay with, I can see that you're managing things, but here's a number just in case anything happens. What do you think about those things? Do you think they're doable? We sometimes feel like we must have the answers and we must know where to signpost somebody, but it isn't always that. Yeah.
A quick question for Jodie, if I may, please. So that's all the things that we could potentially do to help, a person could do to help. But what was the, I mean, you said that you'd completely lost control and you needed to gain some control back. And in that process, there must have been some kind of empowering. So what steps helped you to get your control back and to empower you to get out of it and go through that journey?
Definitely. I think I needed to realize why I was leaving, and I needed to work that out for myself. Because a lot of the time it was, if I can just wait a few more weeks, a few more months, the children will be older, I can explain it better. Christmas is coming, birthdays are coming, I'll just hold on. And that went on for a long, long time. Once I realized that it was affecting the children, this wasn't just my battle anymore. I sort of had to find that power, that control, that strength for them as well. And I think without probably, we would have left at some point, but I don't think we would have been ready without my son speaking out. That was what gave me the confidence, the power, because I had an innocent life to protect. I needed to make that change for him, for all of us. So I think that's what done it. And then when I went to Future Living, I thought that I was the only person that could ever be stupid enough to stay, that I was the person that he picked me because I was weak, because he knew that he could walk all over me. I walked into a room with other people that understood me, had been through it, and I thought, this is the first time in my life I'm not alone. These people get it. I haven't got to explain the reasons why I stayed, why I had children with him. These people understand me and they get me. And it was the turning point. That's when I knew that it wasn't all me.
Thank you, Jodie. Yeah, so it's like you said, the quiet interventions, isn't it? And sometimes, because we're always looking for something really impactful to say, but I remember something that somebody said to me once, and that was the moment that I decided that I was going to leave the relationship I was in. They literally said to me, why are you still in the relationship? And I said, because something might change. And they said to me, what is going to change? And for me, that was it. That was the moment that made me think, actually, what is going to change? Nothing is going to change. And it still took me a while longer. And very often it will be some sort of crisis that will then force you out of the door, an incident or something like that. But for some people, it's not. It's just a simple question. of what is it that you're worried is going to happen? What is going to change in this relationship? Or like Jodie was saying, it was, oh, after the birthdays, after the Christmas, it might be saying to somebody, when do you think it'll be the right time to go? Because that person might then go, it's never going to be the right time. So it might as well be now. So sometimes it's not big statements or big impact. It can just be a small thing that allows that person to think about what it is they need, they want, and how to kind of stay in control of that, because you're given the control when somebody says, what is it that you're waiting for? What is it that you need? Okay, so I realise that we're near time, so I'll whiz through this. So be supportive and help them find local services they can contact for information, and advice, and experts can help. Explain that support services are not going to force them to do anything at all. That's really important. No services that support victims of domestic abuse are going to do things that are going to put them in danger. So if you are in a situation where they feel that you are going to be in danger, if you leave at that particular time, they're not going to make you do that. They're going to support you to how you're going to gently ease yourself out of that situation. Check if they are safe for you to speak to them again, or call them. So when is it going to be okay for me to call you? Is it okay for me to call you? Is there a particular text I can drop you that might be some sort of code or mean something to the two of you? Make sure they know they can call police if they ever feel in danger. So that's another important thing. Sometimes,
Sorry, Jo, can I
yeah.
just say that on the council website, because of the 16 days of activism, we've recently updated local support services. So for any colleagues that maybe aren't aware of where you can find local support services,
Yeah.
they are on our website.
Yeah,
as well.
thank you. And also, one of the organisations we recommend is Sunflower. So if you just remember the Sunflower, if you look that up, it has lots of different connected services specific to different things. So you can kind of, because the worst thing for a victim is to be given 10 organisations and not know. If you can say to somebody, this is, for example, Safer Places, if you're trying to leave, and you're in the relationship, Safer Places is great. You might be able to give them that directly. They know they're just going to ring that one organisation. It's much easier for them if we can sometimes do a little bit of that bit to help. So yes, so National Support Services, we've got the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, Gallup Victim Support, Karma, Nirvana, Mankind, Hourglass. Somebody was asking if the slides can be sent. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll get them from Emma and then I can send them.
Yeah,
round.
because there's
Yeah.
lots of different things that might be useful to look back on. So self-care also, it can be extremely triggering, worrying. I won't lie, I've done this kind of work for many years, but there are still things that happen that keep me awake at night. It is really important to look after ourselves. So set clear boundaries. Okay, don't be constantly checking up on somebody or working after hours unless there's some sort of emergency going on. You've got to look after yourselves as well. Prioritize your own safety, so never ever do anything that's going to put you in danger. Look after your own mental health. Stay informed of organisational policy. So if you're worried about somebody, what do you normally be expected to do? Use the recognise, respond, refer model wisely. And know when to escalate. So there are times when you might not be able to leave that victim in control of their situation if there's an immediate risk of harm or something like that. But again, you would speak to somebody that you work with about what to do with that. So future living. To break the cycle of domestic abuse by providing trauma-informed therapeutic services, peer-led support and prevention-focused education for adults and children affected by domestic abuse. Our services include group empowerment programs for men and women who are victims and survivors of domestic abuse, one-to-one counselling for adults, specialist counselling for children as well, advocating for system change and training for professionals. So they're all of the things that we do. So if you know anybody that needs support, please feel free to put them in touch with us. I think people can self-refer, can't they? So they don't need an organisation to refer. They can just get in touch with us. And here's some links. So that kind of brings us to the end of the training. I'm really sorry that we're slightly over time, and there is a quick evaluation thing that they're going to ask you to do. But before we go, I think it's always really important. Obviously, Jodie said that she's working with us now. In fact, you've been there longer than I have, haven't you? But would you like to say quickly about what your life is like now?
Yeah, so my life is completely different to how it was just a few years ago. The children are completely different, really confident, resilient, doing absolutely amazing. I don't have anything to do with my ex. Children do still see him, but I've done a complete 360 at Future Living, from being a client to now being there, being able to support people. So yeah, it's amazing.
So thank you all for your focus today. We know you probably have a lot of training, and we hope it hasn't been death by PowerPoint. Please do scan this and do the evaluation, and then that's it. We're done.
Sorry, could I just ask, for those that are willing, would you mind having a photo at the front here? I'd just really like to show the rest of the organisation and put it on our LinkedIn, the great turnout that we've had today. So I thought that'd be brilliant if we can just grab a quick photo before everyone dashes off.